What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Ticket with Tippett, the best Dynasty football channel on all social media platforms. Today, we're going to be doing Keep, Trade, Cut. We're going to be going through the quarterback position and the running back position, some guys that I think are pretty close in rankings, and what I would do moving into the 2026 season. So, without further ado, let's jump right in. Starting at the quarterback position, we got Cam Ward, Bryce Young, and CJ Stroud. All guys who are around the same age, even though they got drafted about 2 years apart. So, some things that we need to look at before we jump right into this. Let's talk about the situations that these guys were in. First, starting with Bryce Young, he's in Carolina with Dave Canales for his second season. Gets the same offensive coordinator for the second season in a row. And Brad Idzik is going to be taking over the play calling. So Bryce Young has somebody that he's comfortable with. Brad Idzik's been there for the past two seasons, along with Dave Canales. So two offensive minds to still continue to help Bryce Young grow and get along in the NFL. Now let's talk about CJ Stroud. He had Bobby Slowick for the first two seasons of his career. Had great years both years. Second year, the turnovers started to become a problem, but still had a pretty efficient season as far as all the comparables and numbers stand. Heading into last season, Nick Caley came over from the Rams and joined the Texans as the offensive coordinator. And it seemed like it was a pretty slow start for him and CJ Stroud. The first year wasn't great. We'll show the numbers here in a second. Nick Caley's going to be staying there. The general manager for the Texans came out and said that he was confident that Nick Caley could turn it around. I mean, Nick Caley comes from the McVay tree, so you'd think that an offensive mind like that, he's probably got the right idea. So we'll see how things go for CJ Stroud in 2026, and we'll get to that prediction here in just a second. And finally, Cam Ward. This is the big one I want to talk about. Cam Ward had a crazy 2025 year with Brian Callahan getting fired, Bo Hardigree getting fired with him, and then moving to Mike McCoy, who was the interim offensive coordinator after the Callahan firing. So it was a crazy 2025 season. No rookie should be put through that. And on top of that, the guy has zero weapons on offense. It's absolutely insane what he had to go through. And his offensive line was not that great either. It wasn't horrible, but it definitely was not great. But now moving into 2026, he has somewhat of a quarterback whisperer offensive coordinator. We talked about him in the coach hiring video. So if you want to go check that out, it's in my YouTube video, and it talks about who gets benefited from certain offensive coordinators or head coaches being hired. So go check that out. I'll leave the link in the description down below. But yeah, Brian Dable, this guy coached the likes of Josh Allen, went out of his way to draft Jackson Dart, and he really wanted to draft Jackson Dart. He really wanted Cam Ward, which I think is part of the reason, well, probably the whole reason that he came to Tennessee. But he got Jackson Dart instead, and Jackson Dart looked pretty good in his first season with Brian Dable as the head coach. So we'll see what happens with Cam Ward. Hopefully they get him some weapons. But based off of what we're going on right now and thinking that they're going to add a few weapons, let's go ahead and get to the keep, trade, cut predictions for the quarterback position. So as we kind of sit here and take a look at these numbers, these are from Keep, Trade, Cut themselves. Go to their website. You can find all their keep, trade, cut stuff, and they will give you prompts every time you get on their website. So it's actually pretty neat. You get to sit down and click keep, trade, cut for a bunch of different options. And this is just one that I thought was pretty close. So Cam Ward really dipped low in value near the middle of that season and really gained value near the end. He had his two best games, I think, in week 16 and 18, and really produced pretty well, started to get that connection, and finally had, some long-term stability in the end of the season. So that gives me high hopes for Cam Ward. And CJ Stroud obviously has been pretty much on a downcline since his rookie season. Had a little bit of a shoot up in the back end of the season last year as well. But then once he reached the late parts of the season in the playoffs, it was like a completely different quarterback again, like the guy we saw in 2024. And then Bryce Young, he's been on a steady incline as well. He's gone up significantly from where he was and where people had him ranked in 2023 and 2024. People really thought that Bryce Young wasn't even going to be starting this past season, and he came in, started, and he did pretty well this season. So all of these guys are sitting right around this late teens, early 20s quarterback range. And I mean, if we're going off a situation, I think I'm going to end up keeping Cam Ward here. Surprisingly, I just have this weird feeling that Brian Dable is like a quarterback whisperer. He's going to give Cam Ward the best that he's got because when he's an offensive coordinator and gets to just focus on the offense, the guy is pretty damn unbelievable when it comes to producing a good offense. So look at what he did with the Bills and Josh Allen. He had good offenses in New York. It was just always pretty much the defense that was letting them down. And they played in the NFC East, which can tend to be pretty tough for the most part, especially with the Eagles and the Cowboys always having pretty decent records. So and the GM situation didn't really help Brian Dable either. Joe Schoen should have been fired with Brian Dable, if anything, or Joe Schoen should have been gone and Brian Dable should have stayed. But to each his own. That's in the past. You go with what you got now. I think Cam Ward is in the best situation, and he's going to get weapons more than likely this year, whether they use it with their first round pick this year in the draft or they add it by free agency. He's going to get some help, and it's got to be better than last year. And he didn't turn out to be too terrible last year for all things considered. Now, this is the tricky part right here for me. CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, obviously both drafted 2023. Pick number one, Bryce Young. Pick number two, CJ Stroud. Who do you go with here? I'm going to trade Bryce Young. And the reason that I say this is because Bryce Young has done majority of what he's done on his career with kind of like the same thing that Cam Ward went through last season of okay, can't find consistency, don't have the weapons to do anything, don't have the offensive line to do anything, and the defense, gives up a ton of points, and now you're sitting back and throwing the ball 100 times a game, throwing interceptions because you're down by so much. So I think I'm going to take Bryce Young based off the fact that he's shown steady improvement over his career so far, whereas CJ Stroud has gone down. And in no sense are you cutting CJ Stroud. This is just more of a sense of, okay, who would I rather have in my roster to trade and think I can get more value for? Right now, I do think it's Bryce Young. Even though he's lower ranked in quarterback rankings, I do believe that Bryce Young has the better opportunity with Dave Canales and the weapons that he could get, and I just don't see CJ Stroud. I think he reached his peak in his rookie season, to be honest with you. I mean, he has good weapons. Nico Collins, if they had a good running back, he's in a better situation there. But that offensive line is so bad. I don't know how the offensive line group in this year's draft isn't great. So I mean, unless they go and trade for somebody like the Bears did last year where they traded for two offensive linemen, I don't know how CJ Stroud finds more time in the pocket or is able to produce on a higher level because he's going to have the same targets. They're not going to invest that much more in this offense when they drafted two wide receivers last year, drafted Hutchinson 3 years ago, added Dalton Schultz 2 years ago. Sorry. So how much more are they going to invest in this offense than they already have? I mean, it's at least Bryce Young can say, okay, like give me some more weapons because the defense for Carolina was good last year. They probably feel like they don't really need to add on to that side of the ball. So I don't see why Bryce Young wouldn't be a better trade candidate. You could probably argue somebody at that point and get your point forward and get Bryce Young off your team for maybe, you need a running back or a wide receiver, whatever your needs are. So that ultimately means that we're cutting CJ Stroud. And like I said, Superflex leagues, you're never cutting CJ Stroud. One quarterback leagues, it kind of depends on what the situation is. If you have two really good quarterbacks, then you can try and trade CJ Stroud. But I mean, if you have Bryce Young and CJ Stroud and you're trying to choose between, which one that you want to keep and which one you want to keep to trade, which one you're gonna, let go, it's gonna be Bryce Young for me. Now moving over to the running back position, we got Rico Dowdle, Chuba Hubbard, and Ramondre Stevenson. Three guys who are literally in keep trade cuts rankings, all ranked within the same three rankings. So you have Rico at RB35, Chuba at RB36, and Ramondre at RB37. And we're going to just look at some stats here and just look at their progression through their careers. Obviously, Ramondre and Chuba were drafted in the same year in 2021 and actually drafted, I think, 5 picks apart or something like that. So let's take a look at their numbers respectively. Let's start with Rico Dowdle because this one I found very interesting because people were, really hyping up Rico Dowdle like he did something crazy. And he did the same thing that he did in Dallas. He had almost the same exact number of carries, the same exact number of attempts, and almost the same exact number of yards as well. The only thing that increased was the touchdowns. And honestly, the only reason that increased was because when Dallas got to the red zone last year, they were chucking the ball everywhere. They weren't running the ball in the red zone. Um, they just weren't able to really. So I don't think I think Rico hit the right two defenses. He played against I believe it was either the Dolphins or the Jets, and then he played against the Cowboys, which were, three of the worst defenses in the NFL. at that time. So let's look at the teams that he played against, and let's look at the overall value of Rico Dowdle. Other than this season and the past season before that, he hasn't really done anything in the NFL. He was an undrafted free agent, didn't really get any touches in 2020 or 2022. Wasn't even on the team. He was on the practice squad in 2021. So lost that year. But he's one of those guys that kind of has low tread on his tires. So it's kind of a good thing for him. But all these guys are, like I said, with the quarterbacks as well, right around the same age. So age doesn't really play a factor in this. I wanted to pick guys who are around the same age and kind of go off of that. And let's talk about Chuba Hubbard, who got hurt obviously in the middle of the season last year, which is why Rico Dowdle ended up having, the season that he had. And let's look at the numbers comparatively from 2024, which was a great year, and 2023, which was a good year, which is why he got the extension. And let's look at 2025 and compare them. The yards per attempt don't really go that far off of where he was in 2023 and 2024. And honestly, they're not that far off of Rico Dowdle's career numbers either. So I think these guys are pretty close, and I think that's why the Panthers are having such a tough decision in who to actually keep on their roster. And I mean, their decision's a lot tougher than yours in Dynasty. Believe me when I say that. And then comparing them to Ramondre Stevenson, obviously the late half of the season, Ramondre's got some juice going into the offseason because the end of that season that he had between the last couple of weeks and the playoffs, that guy torched every defense that he played against. I think he scored like 2 touchdowns in the last 2 games both. So crazy numbers out of Ramondre to end the season. But as far as carries go, yardage, yards per attempt, all those numbers are about the same for these guys. So let's talk about, again, the situations that they're in. Ramondre going into another year with Travion Henderson. Will Travion Henderson get more touches, or will it be the same as last year where Ramondre is, kind of the lead back and Travion plays this, passing down role or gets a couple carries in the first half and Ramondre is able to, stay healthy and come in the second half and really just dominate the second half of the game. So that's what the Patriots relied on this past year. And Ramondre still got hurt, just like Chuba Hubbard, about halfway through the season. So his numbers probably would have actually been better as far as rushing yards and snaps and attempts and stuff like that. So, and then Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle. Chuba obviously is still signed to the Panthers, and Rico Dowdle is a impending free agent. So, where will Rico Dowdle go? If they end up back in Carolina, the money's got to speak for itself at some point. You have to, I think, start Chuba Hubbard again. I think that's what Dave Canales is going to do because I think they like Chuba Hubbard a lot. I think it was just, okay, let's just get Chuba healthy, fully healthy, and let's feed the hot hand. I think that's more of what Rico Dowdle was. So we're going to trade Rico Dowdle because I think he has the most he's just the hottest guy right now. You know, he is just like coming off that season. Everybody's got the hype around Rico Dowdle. He's got the hype train chugga chugga on his back right now. So I'm gonna trade Rico Dowdle. And then now it's between keep and cut of Chuba Hubbard and Ramondre Stevenson. And honestly, if I go off of what I think will happen, I think Travion does get more touches. I think he showed a lot there in the middle of the season that he can be number one, and he's got low tread on his tires between college and now the pros. So I mean, Ramondre's getting up there in age. He's a little bit older than Chuba is. And, I just believe that Chuba, I don't think Rico's going back to Carolina. I think that Chuba is going to be the workhorse there. They're going to have Jonathan Brooks coming back, but that dude couldn't stay healthy if I don't even know what the right term is, but that dude can't stay healthy. So with Chuba Hubbard getting most of the looks and probably being the lead back again in Carolina, I just think that I'm going to keep Chuba Hubbard. And as crazy as that sounds, that's going to be probably one of my hottest takes of the off season is that Chuba Hubbard is probably going to be a lot better in 2026 than he was in 2025. And where does it go for a guy like Ramondre? He's 28 years old. He's got this young rookie running back who's coming up in the ranks and really dominated the couple games that he had the lead back role and really broke off some explosive plays. I mean, as an organization, when do you make that change? So, and as a dynasty owner, when do you make that change? So we're going to cut Ramondre Stevenson, keep Chuba Hubbard, and we're going to trade Rico Dowdle because ultimately he's the hottest hand in this deck of cards. So yeah, that's my keep trade cut for the quarterback and running back positions. We're going to do a second video with wide receivers and tight ends. We're going to grab 3 similar wide receivers, 3 similar tight ends, and we're going to go through kind of which ones we would keep over some others. And obviously, these guys you're probably not cutting necessarily off of your team. In some in some low number in some low number of team leagues, you will cut those guys, but in some deeper leagues like dynasty leagues and keeper leagues and stuff like that, you're not cutting those guys. But it's just the tool that we're using to kind of compare these guys and what we would do with them. I mean, a cut guy really in a deeper league, okay, that's probably like my bench guy. I'm going to trade the guy with who I think has the most potential outside of the guy that I'm keeping. So that's really like the gist of it. And I think keep trade cut is a good way for you to kind of, if you have three guys on your team at the same position and you're like, man, I really could upgrade it somewhere else. What can I do with one of these three guys? I think that keep trade cut is kind of like the perfect tool for that. So if you have like this situation where you were a rebuilding team and you ended up getting a CJ Stroud and then you drafted Cam Ward 2 years later and then you traded for Bryce Young at some point because he had low value and you were rebuilding, then you know, I mean, there's a situation where you have these three guys and you have to make that decision. And same thing for Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard and Ramondre. I mean, there's definitely a chance that you have all three of those guys on your team, and you're trying to make that decision right now of who to trade for an upgrade at another position. So go ahead and drop your comments down below and make sure that you let me know who you would keep, who you would trade, and who you would cut from the quarterback and running back positions from the options that I gave you. And go ahead and drop in the comments some others that you'd like to see. Let me know if there's three guys on your team that you're trying to choose between, and I can kind of give you some advice. And we might do a video one day where I take some comments and go off of that and put them in the video and then, kind of go through everything. So, like I said, another keep trade cut video coming with wide receivers and tight ends. Be on the lookout for that. So, other than that, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And we'll see you in the next one.